Dude, this is the thing people don't understand about social media, and it's a real problem. This is one of the real problems of our time, and I think that it's multifaceted, and I think that it has a couple different denominators, and that put it into the context that everyone deals with, and put it in the context out of some like similitude of anterior, and like antechamberal aspects, and actually puts it, I think, central to the nature of our time in this social sphere and the influence of people's life as such. It also connects into some sort of amalgamated sense of control mechanism, which is why I think it is so important, because you need to understand none of this is an accident. None of this is accidental, and also, and more importantly, none of it needs to be what it is. The nature of the problem, and the nature of the problem is that it's twofold. Number one, you do not and should not be connected or even aware of everyone else's thoughts and lives at every single second of your life. It's actually a very damaging and unhealthy thing. Now, here's how we could consider. There's two ways to consider this. Number one, that it could possibly be a healthy thing. And number two, that fundamentally it is not. Now, number one, if you could consider that this could possibly be a healthy thing, to be aware of everyone else's thoughts and everyone else's lives as they choose to present them at any time, could this potentially be a positive thing? Could we imagine a circumstance where people actually get a benefit from going into some space, whether it's mental or artificial or whatever it is, and being able to have access to everyone else's thoughts, whether but via proxy, via similar shared experiences, content, or access directly to their experience as they choose to share? I mean, it's a difficult question. I think that I think that you could make the argument that it could potentially be a good thing, but at the same time, I think the nature of when you take it from now, human beings exist fundamentally in an experience where we are aware of other people's opinions and thoughts on a regular basis, if we are living in a social sphere, which humans by nature do. However, this is this is not necessarily true of the waking hours of one's life per se. Like people don't necessarily live in a perpetual awareness of everyone else's thoughts and opinions, and if they did, I mean, imagine the chaos that would ensue from that. Imagine the problems that would come from having an awareness of everyone else around you's thoughts and ideas that they could give to you at any time with very little consequence across a non-spatially coherent medium within the context of a local social sphere. I mean, even then it would be problematic. It would be mitigated now by the physical proximity. So, but I think that there is to my point, there is a correlation to be made to human life as it exists now, and that's being very forgiving. I'm making an allowance here. But if you scale it up to the fucking world, at the level of the world, to be available to the experience of the entire world and the thoughts of the entire world at any given time, I think it fundamentally causes two problems. Number one, the first problem is that it puts you in a position where you suddenly don't have the ability to control the good or the bad intentions with people's contributions per se as such. With a limited number of interactions or abilities to interactions, you have the capacity to make a judgment call on who is there to give a positive contribution or a negative contribution. These are very different things. If someone's coming to a space with the intention to give a negative contribution, this needs to be fucking, on a social level, this needs to be administered punishment and, if required, removal by the group at large. And that's fundamentally, especially when you're offloading this to some algorithmic fucking non-personality, it's almost impossible to do at the level of the moral. You can do it at the level of the technocratic, but that doesn't necessarily fall along moral lines, and it doesn't necessarily influence people in the ways that you would get people who have a proclivity to do the wrong thing to do the right thing outside of their own personal interest. I think that, as an aside, what it really does, the medium puts you in a position where you're more likely to do things that are interested to your personal. And this is where I think the problem much lies. Now, the other aspect of it. So if we can say that fundamentally, I think there isn't a position where you couldn't take the position of saying, yes, this is necessarily I don't think it could be in a position where it could be a good thing, because no one's going to come to that space. There's going to be enough people who come to the space in a negative fashion where it'll become chaotic. And I think this speaks to the nature of society at large, where it's you have these patterns of history throughout history. You have these patterns that repeat themselves, where societies become overly bloated, they become overly large, and then they crash under their own weight. You think about the Tower of Babel, you think about the Roman Empire, you think about, whatever other organization of humanity that becomes too large for itself to manage. And I think that this, not that the management practices themselves are moral. I think a lot of times maybe that's a bad example. Maybe human society is a bad example, but it's the medium in which we're working. But the point that I'm making is that at the level of literally an infinite amount of people giving their opinions and interact and being able to hear their thoughts and see their experience at any time, I think that it comes down to the intention of the people engaging, right? This is really for forget social media for a second. This is really about any type of environment and group of people. If you have people that are engaging for the wrong reasons, they'll ruin. If you have two people and one of them is engaging for the wrong reasons, they'll ruin it, right? If you have 3 people, if you have 300 people, if you have 50 people and people are engaging for the wrong reasons, then you'll ruin it. And it's like, I don't know, man. I don't see a way where at the global level you can influence people to the point where, yeah, we want you to engage with social media, but we want you to do it at a moral level. We want you to curry goodwill between your fellow humans. We want you to bring positivity to other people. We want you to actually be good and moral people, not for your own sake, but for the sake of doing it, for the sake of the higher power, for the sake of Christ, but not only the sake of Christ, but the sake of your relationship to Christ and not your relationship to the world. And it's like, or whatever, however you want to, or whatever type of analogical similarity or proxy that you want to put on that. The point is that I don't think, here's the thing, if people come to a space with their own ideas, I think that human beings naturally, probably above a certain group size, will deteriorate into basically degenerate behavior. Like, there's a certain size of a group in a local situation where the group itself is able to properly mediate the behavior of the members of the group, and still it's not without difficulty in those situations. What is that? The Dunbar number is like 200, maybe, like, let's just say, being generous, 200 people max. A human group locally can mitigate and mediate its own disputes and lack of proper behavior within its own context. I think that it's obvious that above that number, what you're going to have is, and this is just understanding human nature as inherently having a proclivity. Like, you're going to have this is the assumption. Let's just say that 50% of people come to, actually, man, it's not 50, but let's just say on theory that 50% of people come to a certain arena with good intentions, and 50% come to an arena with bad intentions. If you want to have a positive space, if you want to have a space where people behave in the right way, it's going to be actually a positive experience, you have to be able to have a way for that space to be mediated and mitigated so that the people that are behaving in the wrong way are influenced to behave in the right way outside of their own choosing. Because this is the thing. the human society below the Dunbar number doesn't necessarily organize itself naturally. The people don't just decide to do the right thing. You don't. Human nature doesn't. It's more of the fact that the society, if it's working properly at that level, is able to have enough people who are coming in and having an influence on the other people, whether it is through minor force or like the rule of law or whatever, but they're able to have the influence on the other people to be able to get them to behave properly outside of their own willpower. So it's really an indictment, man. I think it's really an indictment of the human race to when you have to say, yeah, some people are just going to come into these spaces and be fucking pieces of shit no matter what. And you have to have a way to influence them not to. Now, I think it's obvious at the level of social media that it's not possible. And I think also at the level of the societal corruption that we're seeing, it's not 50% of people who go there with the wrong reasons. It's like 90. Most people on social media, maybe you have 1 in 10 people who are on there literally they're not self-promoting themselves. They're not doing something for themselves. They're actually doing something for the good of the people. Like maybe 1 in 100 is doing that. Like if you have, I would say out of 10 people who are doing religious content, most of them are like cheating on their wives, or they're pieces of shit who are just trying to sell fucking t-shirts. These people aren't. This is the nature of the modern discourse, and most people on social media, I would say close to some 95%, aren't in it for themselves 100%. And everything that they say, if they are attempting to be positive, maybe half the people are faking being positive. And this isn't, again, the old gaslighting term cynical. It's not cynical, it's the fucking fact, you fucking idiots. And so this is the nature of the problem, is that fundamentally it's unorganizable within the context of human nature. Secondarily to that, and this is, I think, is the more damning aspect of this, is the fact that these spaces are fundamentally being influenced and affected by, like, it's actually such an inversion. Like we talk about a society below the Dunbar number who self-organizes and has its own moral code set by its members, and we're talking about a global artificial social network that is actually being run by corporations who are trying to fucking kill you. They want to fuck you over. So it's like, you have to see the grand irony of this. It's like a complete inversion. Instead of having natural sized human communities in which it self-regulates itself to run at a moral level, because it's realized that the moral operation is the thing that actually properly perpetuates human beings into the future, and that propagates a society that can sustain itself. So it just naturally aligns with the laws of nature and the laws of mathematics and the laws of physics to become a moral system that propagates itself as such, and it mediates itself to make sure of that. You gotta understand, the situation now is that it is a grotesque literally an inversion of that, where we now have something ballooned to a size of the entire fucking planet, the population of the entire species, and it's instead of being mediated to behave morally so that it can propagate itself efficiently over time, it literally is. It's influenced by corporations that want you. Literally want you to die. They influence people to behave non-morally. They incentivize non-moral behavior. They incentivize self-promotion. They incentivize rancor. They incentivize resentment. They incentivize hatred. They incentivize, again, anger. They incentivize jealousy. They incentivize they incentivize haughtiness. They incentivize, again, lust, anger, what's the other one? Not philandering, but what's the fucking one of the 10 commandments where you cheat on your wife? I'm blanking on what it's called. What's it called? Oh my God, what is that one? It's like one of the main 10 commandments. Infidelity. These social networks, they promote infidelity. Like it's like, and you could, and man, you could say, well, the people choose to do that. Well, again, the people naturally, at least 50% of them, that's being generous, will do the wrong thing no matter what. They just will. But when you have it, so that's like, you got to understand, above that Dunbar number, I mean, actually at any level of society, a society that can't self-regulate itself at the moral level is damned. And if you have there's, I mean, literally demonic forces that are incentivizing amoral behavior now. It's a complete inversion. Now, going back to my original thesis, and I think I forgot the second half of my original introduction here, but I don't think I'll get back to that. So whatever it was, God bless it. I'm sure it was a great idea. But the nature of this, okay, so can we again return to this? Can we imagine a social media or a global, again, what was the analogy I used? A space where people could see each other's thoughts and see each other's experiences at all times. Can we imagine a space like that actually does that is a positive space, that is a positive influence and experience for humanity? Well, I think what you'd have to do, and this is okay. This is now we move from the Dunbar numbers from tribal societies. Now we move up to, we're honestly tracing through human civilization here, an interesting journey. We move from the tribal number. We move from the tribal society. We move from the tribal societies up to the level of the culturally driven societies. And I've God knows, Lord knows, I have the problems with it. Look, culture itself, the organization of society above this, I think fundamentally is due to corruption, and this is why. Is because to cohere people above this Dunbar level, in the times of so societies fall and crumble, right? There's this organizational principle to their temporality and their cyclicality. As civilizations rise, there is an incentive on those who are organizing them, because now civilizations are organized by people who are looking for something out of them. Otherwise you would not be incentivized to do so. However, at the moments of the organization, when the organization is needing to be done, there is a realization, again, at the same way that the tribal society organizes itself. There is a realization that this has to be done, and again, this is like the law of physics. This isn't necessarily even a religious thing, although you can relate it to that if you so choose. But it's like a law of physics that the people understand that to have a proper society that functions well, you have to align it with the laws of nature, and that people understand this at a fundamental level. This is a subconscious thing. It doesn't really need to be said. It's just done because they are trying to build something that works, and to do that, it needs to be moral. Otherwise, it won't work. It's like trying to build a bridge. It has to be able to transfer the loads and forces into the foundations. Otherwise, it will not allow people to drive across it. It won't function. So, when people are building societies, they tend to put into place a moral framework of ideology. Now, the ideology of the society has to be constructed. This is the mechanizing tool of the ruling classes to cohere people in a situation where they typically wouldn't. And it's also it is the mechanism that is used to influence, because again, people need to be influenced to behave in a moral way, otherwise they won't do so. And so ideological influence and initiation within the context of societies is a requisite aspect of the building of societies to function together and to regulate themselves at the level of the moral. To get this to happen, you have to basically sell people something, right? So people are going to have to believe what is sold to them so that they can do this. Now, there's varying levels of influence that you can put on people. Some levels of ideologies like Christian thought or moral reason in the time of the Greeks, these are in line with morality. They are in line with something righteous and good, and they have I'm not even gonna say shades of the truth. A lot of it is mostly true. Of course, some of it is bullshit because it's a construction of the truth. It's selling. This is really what it is. It's selling to people who otherwise would be doing the wrong thing, a sales pitch for them to do the right thing. And that's a great thing. Honestly, it's not a bad thing. At that point, it's not a bad thing. The only thing I have a problem with is the intentions, because the reason that they're doing is that so they can build economic machines that will bring them, the elites, wealth at the top, and they're using these ideologies. Now, I think when they do this, they're not just making this shit up at the time. They're basically looking around and they're picking whatever sort of thought, whatever, thought leaders at the time, whatever sort of the priest class, whoever's coming up with the ideas of the day, whoever's delving into the truth and picking out knowledge that is eternal and has real weight to it. That's what they use. They use the good shit. They're selling you with the fucking things, the best that we came up with. A lot of the time, that's the thing. The selling of patriotism to the people is such a beautiful sales pitch, because it's like there's something righteous. There's something, the ideas of liberty, the ideas of justice, the ideas of freedom. They aren't even, this now we're delving into our own ideologies, right? As nationalists, as modernists. But you got to understand, these are true things. These are real, and these are Enlightenment ideas. These are religious ideas. These are logical, these are rationalist ideas. They're real, true. Not to say all rationalist ideas are good, but I'm going to tracing through history. The ideologies base themselves on real pillars and bastions of truth. They're real. The priests, the good priests, have pulled out of the sky pieces of the truth, and then they're there. But then they are utilized by the society builders to put into place ideologies that cohere the people, so that they can build economic machines, so that they can generate their own wealth. And this is really what it is. But the point that I'm making is that typically at the beginning they use moral frameworks, because that's what's going to work, and they're attempting, at least then in their own goodwill, out of their, again, people are typically not going to be presenting themselves as what they do. Yeah, they're saying they're doing it for the people. They're doing it for themselves. They're trying to build an economic machine, just like the people on Facebook are fucking posting about God, but really they're trying to look cool. They're just promoting themselves. They're just trying to say something interesting so that they can, their neighbor's wife wants to fucking cheat on them, or fuck with them, or whatever, whatever godforsaken evil thought and idea that lurks in the back of your mind whenever you do something good and pretend that you mean it. Right? And that's exactly what they do. That's exactly what the society builders at the beginning of societies do. Now, ideology. So this is what ideology, at the level above the Dunbar number, we have to organize society using some force, some ideological force. And I'm using ideological there as a proxy for the word that actually would fill that space, because how do you cohere a society above that level? You can't do it by force. It doesn't work. Even if you want to enslave your population, you have to still convince the administrative classes to do it. There's always an ideology. Now, so here's the thing. Could you argue, and this is back to that, could you argue that ideology could be in full goodwill? Well, I don't know about that, because the truth doesn't come and demand to be spoken, or the truth doesn't come and demand to be sold. Christ wasn't walking around Judea forcing people to sign up because he wanted them to start building trade empires to fucking India. That wasn't the point. Christ came and spoke the truth because that's what he was called to do. He didn't go and fight against the people's will. He didn't go try to sell them to be a part of his thing. He just went and preached because that's what he was called. It was the truth coming forth, and it wasn't, you weren't demanded to listen. You could choose if you so choose, and he didn't go and try to tear down other ideologies and build this one up. There wasn't a war about it. The Roman Empire did use his ideologies a couple hundred years later. So, there's a perfect example. But the truth cannot be, honestly, the truth cannot be sold as an ideology. Why is this? Why? Because here's the thing. Here's why the truth cannot be sold as an ideology. Because this goes back to the very start. Everybody already knows the truth. Everybody knows the truth. So in a situation where everybody knows the truth and 50% of people still choose to do the wrong thing anyways, the truth isn't enough to get people to do the right thing. And this is, That's a very interesting thing. I mean, maybe there's a corruption to the nature of the way that people do come into the world, but due to the organizing principle of our societies from the very beginning, whether it is the tribal society, whether it is the civilization, where you're saying that people are born into a system that already is ideological, or that already is being ruled by people who don't have their best interest in mind, or are simply organizing the tribal space for their own benefit. You could say that, but I also would argue that truth is fundamentally already known by all people know truth. So you can't, first of all, you can't sell the truth. You can remind people of the truth, and that's the way that truth comes against ideology or against darker forces, that it stands unadorned. The truth stands unadorned, but the truth is preeminent. The truth as precedent is really, it's the way that humans engage with truth. We're like reminded of it. So can you remind someone of what they are, and then in that state they won't act incorrectly? I don't know. Maybe. I know you can do it. You can certainly say something and people will listen. But will people really choose to do the right thing if they already know it? If they already know right from wrong and they still choose wrong? And now this gets to another point, is that, there's forces at work. There is a war and a battle at work. And you have to understand that it just fundamentally takes an organization of society through some organizing principle, whether it is the tribal social paradigm or if it's the ideological paradigm. Now, could there possibly be, and we're reaching for something grand here, could there be a paradigm of reality in which the truth is so everlastingly pure that human beings, by their nature, are called to do the right thing? Not by force, not by influence that is self-interested, but by the pure bleeding eternity and righteousness of what is true. Could human beings be called to do the right thing in spite of themselves? I think the answer is yes. But it doesn't account for the dark forces. And it's like there are dark forces at work, and there is a war to be made, and people are seduced by the devil. I think that the devil calls out of the forest. The devil calls out of the jungle. Right? You don't have to be living in a modern society to be contacted by the demons. They exist. I don't know if they exist in the heart of every man, but they're lurking right around the edge of the campfire, and sometimes they're right in the flames, and they're right there. And this is why 50% of people are seduced by that. And now this also takes us past the material, and it takes us past the esoteric, because really when you put all of this in context, you really what you're looking at is a fundamental corruption. And where is this coming from? There's a grander scheme that we are a part of that influences us. Sometimes it works through our peers in the human race. Sometimes it works through our own hearts. But you have to understand the influence going on in the world. To my mind, the only way to fight against this is to bleed the truth out so strong that and people know this, and people understand what the truth, people understand what the natural laws are. People naturally do flock to them, but it's under the energy of what is righteous. But there is a countercurrent that goes through the heart of man, and people are attracted to the dark side as well. And fundamentally, I don't know if you could ever fight it. I don't know if you could ever turn everyone good. And so in that idea, it's like you're always going to have the devils and the angels at war. And when you have this, and when I look at something like social media in which the devils are winning by such a fucking landslide, it's goddamn disheartening. And it just makes you want to, like, I don't see any good to it. How is it good if 95% of people on social media are corrupt at the level of the heart and the level of the soul? And how are we doing anybody a service? How are we doing any service to mankind if we're allowing that to happen? And worse, the people who are supposed to be organizing the society, at least at a minimum, to the benefit of it so that it propagates, they're trying to destroy the society. They're literally influencing people to be negative. They're influencing people to do things that are not in their own self-interest. They're influencing people to sin. They directly influence and call people to sin on these social media apps. The number one part of it is pride, anger, lust. You name them all. That's basically what it sells. And it's like, dude, you have to understand the nature of what this is. At the end of the day, whether or not it would be possible for a paradigm of blessed, righteous interaction with the entire globe, and people were sharing their thoughts and lives, and it was all positive, coming from a positive place with positive influence. I don't think that is possible. But even if it was, it's not what we're looking at now. What we're looking at now is something so damned and so condemned that you have to look at it and see where this goes. When you have most people on the planet are engaging with something with their fellow humans on the planet that is fundamentally rotten and corrupt at its core, you're looking at a collapse, an impending collapse. And if you can't see what's coming, when it happens, I don't know what to tell you, because every sign is there. The coming collapse is on its way. And when the people are in this dire of a state, and they're living in this big of an inversion of what society should be, it can't be more clear, and I can't explain it to you anymore. And I think that what this really tells you is the level of corruption will only lead to destruction. That's really the conclusion here. There's no other conclusion. Everything else is immoral. It is really an open-ended question about the nature of reality. But the one conclusion here is that we are in the state of the